Hey, welcome back to You Plant, We Water. I'm your host, Dr. Toya Flowers, licensed professional counselor with a PhD in counseling, and I'm also a counseling professor. And here on this part of the world, we are focused on talking about your faith, your mental health, and how to have the happy, healthy, thriving relationships, not only that you deserve, but that God wants you to have. I am super excited to share my special guest of today, none other than my mom.
Hello.
This is La Flora Flowers.
Yes.
Flowers for the rest. So thank you, Mom, for being here. And I asked my mom to come because our topic today came about just over the holidays, was watching different podcasts and things. And I was watching the Oprah Winfrey podcast, and she had Dr. Bruce Perry on, who, for those of you who, most of you probably aren't familiar, but he's very big in the world of psychology, and he does a lot about trauma and how your body keeps score as far as traumatic experiences, right? How you can kind of tell what you've been through by how your body responds, your nervous system, things like that. But having said that, he and Oprah Winfrey wrote this book that is really great. And we don't have to go over the book, but just the title alone is going to shift our perspective. And I happened to be talking with my mom last week, and we started having this natural conversation about this particular subject, which I know I haven't told you yet, but I'm about to. And it's about the book, What Happened to You, right? So the whole point of this book and our show today is what would happen if we shifted our mindsets from when we come into contact with people who either we find difficult or maybe we've fallen out with a loved one or something like that? What would happen if we shifted our mind and shifted the conversation from what's wrong with you to what happened to you, right? And the premise is from this book is that if we think about what happened to people, what made them the way they are, we can have a lot more understanding, common ground, and empathy versus if we just assume what's wrong with you, which in my book implies that everything is right with me. If something's wrong with you, then I must be right.
Yeah.
Right. So that's going to be our topic. And I'm going to ask my mom some questions. And Risha, she's here. They did talk a little bit about intergenerational traumas, right? Things that happened before you were born, before your mom was born, all of that, before your grandmother was born, and intergenerational healing, which is what we really want to focus on. So thank you again, Mom, for being here.
You're welcome.
And for tuning in and supporting us all this time behind the scenes.
Yes.
Okay, so like I said, we want to try to shift our focus, right? And the way another part this came up with, they were saying on the podcast that when two people are, if you're dysregulated, and my mom was like, what do you mean by that? And so I will explain that. But when you're dysregulated, you can't really resolve anything. You can't find a common point. And all dysregulated means is that once you're really upset, your body and mind and soul are connected. And so once your body is dysregulated, you can't think logically. Dysregulated may be, you might be angry, you might be something, you could be afraid, you can be really excited, but whatever it is, once your nervous system, if you think of your fight, flight, or freeze, once that's kicked in, it's very hard to just have a rational conversation. And in fact, what Dr. Perry and Oprah were saying is that when somebody is dysregulated, no matter what you say to them, they're going to think you're wrong. They can't hear what you're actually saying. They hear what they think. What are your thoughts on just that little nugget, if you have any yet, Mom?
Well, let me see. It makes sense to be
Mhm.
dysregulated. That you're not really, no matter what the person may be trying to say or explain, basically seems like what you're saying is it's not connecting.
Exactly. Yep. It's like your brain is offline, like a glitch.
Right.
Speaking of multiple generations, when we were traveling with the kids to college, they kept talking about glitches,
Yes.
which means when your brain is offline. So that would be the young people's term. Yeah. And so when you got that, so you already could be dysregulated. So you're not hearing, right? And the Bible says be slow to speak and quick to listen, right? But you can't because you're offline. And I've had conversations with people or disagreements or maybe even arguments, right? Where I hear myself saying, that's not what I said. That's not what I said. And they're like, but that's what they're hearing. So making this shift from, well, what is wrong with you, right? Like, that's not what I'm saying. What's wrong with you? Instead of, well, what happened to you, which helps us tell our own stories. So we're just going to talk about it broadly, about generations and things like that. So, Mom, for you, a question. What kind of pressures do you think that people from your generation or maybe beyond, you might have observed with your mom or things like that, but what kind of pressures for people in your generation or beyond do you think what am I saying? Your generation normalized that younger generation, that younger people might not understand, right? So pressures from the previous generation that like maybe the Jake or your grandkids or even me that we might not understand.
Well, I'm thinking about that, and what I'm thinking is my generation was evolving and growing up.
Yeah.
One of the things was getting married young was the thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now we find out that the brain is not fully developed until 25.
Yes.
So now you had young people with undeveloped brains getting married and starting families.
Yeah.
Which could have been a very dangerous thing. But okay. So now we know better and we know more. So that was one of the things. Yeah. I do understand that even with nature, the chronological clock is ticking.
Yeah.
You really didn't have older people trying to have children like they do now.
I mean, it's gotten much older. People well into their 50s and beyond are having children.
Yes,
so that's
that
true.
did not happen.
That's true.
We didn't think about it. You didn't ask about it. It just was not something to be considered when I was young and having children. So that was one of the things. Other than that, I think a lot of the things are the same. They just may be wrapped up a little differently. Of course, we wanted careers. We wanted to have a successful family. We wanted to have an income that allowed for us to have the things that maybe our parents and our grandparents did not have. And I'm sure that's the same thing going on with your generation and the generation coming under. So they're wrapped differently, but I think they're kind of the same.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned this part about, people just married and had kids earlier, because if we go back to the topic of what happened to you, and if you're trying to, understand maybe an adult mother and her son or what have you, that's a big difference, right? Like, hey, I did the best I could with you as my own brain was still developing.
Exactly. I wasn't saying, I was thinking, but I'm just thinking it. Exactly. I did the best I could with my undeveloped brain. You're lucky I didn't feed you coffee. Because remember now, so right. That's something to really think about.
Right. When, because, and part of where this conversation came up with me and my mom, now that I have an adult child as well, and I tell my clients this all the time too, I don't care, you could be the perfect parent. Your child is going to bring something to you at some point that they were disappointed with. And so all you can do is be ready for it and, try to have an open mind and open heart and know that, hey, they're going to bring something. But to these adult children who have things to bring their parents, let's also remember this. Like, a lot of our parents, their brain was still developing. They were technically still children themselves, doing the best they could. And then what happened to their parents who were even younger, right? So love that. Okay. Along those lines, how do you think your generation defines strength, especially when it comes to women or mothers?
Oh, that was, okay.
It's a big one.
It is a big one. And in my generation, when I was very young, because I grew up with you.
Yes, that's what makes it so
like
weird.
Every
time
I
keep
in the
saying
same generation a little bit. But anyway.
That's what I keep he
That's
fix
why I
it.
keep thinking.
You
Now,
like,
if you ask me about my mom or my grandmoms, I would be easy to be able to tell you the difference. But since I was growing up with you, we spent a whole lot of time in the same generation. But anyway, because I think
This
the
is true.
generation is like 20 years.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, and I had her young, so yeah.
Why she looks so great.
we was hanging out in the same generation for quite some time. So let me see. No, say it again.
So the question is, how would your generation, which could also be mine, define strength, especially as it relates to a woman or a mother?
I think one of the things that is different.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and it wasn't my generation; it would have been my parents' generation, which again we shared some of the same generation. Was we thought a woman was strong if she had a lot of children.
Mm-hmm.
Now we think a woman is strong if she doesn't.
Yeah, that is a shift in mindset, right? Because there's actually, I know as I was coming into my young adulthood, there was a lot of talk like, girl, don't have more kids and you can carry out with you if you ever have to leave, which is a very different mindset.
Yes.
Like I know my dad's mom, she had 11 children, right?
Yes. So. I know women with 14, 11.
Yeah.
That was, and that was considered to be strong.
Yeah.
And I assume you had to be strong because, of course, like you said, with your dad, his mom had 11 children and 7 boys. So you have to ask yourself, how do you control 7 boys?
Right.
Well, I mean, because they can take over. You have a team that can tie you up and put you in the closet.
They do. We both.
Be like, we're not doing that. We're taking your car and we're going out. But that was different. But so that was considered a strong woman, and she had a lot of sons or a lot of children, period, and she was able to hold it together. Unfortunately, what made that be such a strong woman was, sadly, many times she was left with the children, and the men were not there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you were strong or again your brain had snapped. I don't know what we would call it, but that was considered a strength.
Yeah, and so in tying it back together, when we think, okay, well, what is their story? Rather than just be upset with them, what happened to them that leads them to approach things in this way? So if we just think about generational differences, if we just start right there before we approach a conflict, look at how much ground we could cover, right? As I'm hearing what my mom's saying about her mother, and then I'm thinking about my children and how my experience is different, but even something like you were touching on with the fathers and how actively involved they were. That could look a lot different just a few generations back. Right. And so then when you have, I don't know, what's my son's generation? Are they Z? I don't know. I've lost track. Yeah. But when you have today's young adults and their gripe might be with their parent, Dad, you weren't there. I could never talk to you. And his father, if they pause and say, well, what happened to my dad? His dad is thinking, talk to you. That wasn't even a part of my role of what I thought I was there to do. I was there to provide, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
So, okay. Another concept in this piece is that part of why we operate the way we do is because we had to survive. And our need to survive that shaped our behavior, whether those patterns are helpful or not, right? We develop coping mechanisms. And sometimes they're outdated and we need to stop using the same coping mechanisms, but it does dictate kind of how we approach life. So when we think about it from that perspective, right? Make sure I got my questions. It's like the same one. It is the same one. I'm going to skip the question. I'm going to say that one. So one, survival shapes behavior, and I'm going to move to the second part. For many of us, and this is across generations, growing up, you may have gotten a message that expressing emotions wasn't safe, right? And I think the further back we go, the more, because this is kind of like a new age thing, like, what do you feel? How you feel about it? Whereas, that wasn't always the case. And when we're talking about experiences that shape your behavior, I forgot to mention this. This starts in the womb, right? Before your brain and all of that was developing while you were in your mother's womb, God, the plans he had for you well before. And you were shaped by the experiences of your mom. Her stresses while pregnant with you was while your brain synapses were going. I'm laughing because I'm thinking of my son. It had an impact, right? We know this. And when I was pregnant with my youngest son, I was under a lot of stress. We'd experienced a lot of deaths in the family while I was pregnant with him. And he was born with a little male pattern baldness. He had a little receding hairline like George Jefferson because he was stressed. He came in the world stressed, right? So survival and all of that shapes behavior. And emotional expression may not have been safe. So, question for you. How were emotions kind of typically handled or viewed during the time when you were growing up?
Well, when I was a kid,
Mhm.
you were kind of, I'm gonna say told, or you recognized it, or somehow it went unsaid that you don't show a lot of emotion because
Mhm.
people will walk over you.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah. I still, there's a saying, don't wear your heart on your sleeve, right?
exactly.
Mhm. So, how do you think people felt about being vulnerable or asking for help?
I think it was different than now. If you had
Mhm.
to ask for help, you had a circle, which was your immediate family or very dear friends.
Yeah.
Now we just ask everybody for help. They may need help too, and we ask, "Can you help me?" And the person says, "Can you help me?"
Right.
So I think, and then you didn't do it often. It wasn't like if you needed some help. I know with my mother, if
Yeah.
she might have asked my grandparents for help, but it was like she must really need it because she's not gonna just
Mhm.
every week. Can you pay the light bill? Can you pay the gas bill?
Yeah.
Can you do this? Can you do that? It seems like with the younger generation, under 20 now, it's like, but that's what you're here for, to help me.
Yes.
I don't even know why you were born if you're not going to help me.
Yes, right.
And I shouldn't even have to ask you for help. You ought to know I need help.
Now that's a great point. And I see this with my couples a lot where people really are under the impression, well, you should know what I need. And nobody, no other human being knows what you need because we can't read your mind. Even we can guess,
Right.
we can, but we don't know unless you ask. And you're right. That was not as rampant as it is now, especially because there's so many, this younger generation, they have so many different more models of vulnerability and asking for help. They can just go on YouTube and watch all kind of people expressing, all kind of things about their
Right.
deepest thoughts. That wasn't the case.
They don't even
when I
have
was
to
growing
ask
up.
for help now. You can go on YouTube and get a GoFundMe, and other people you don't even know.
You don't have to know those people. That's so true. You could get help from complete
And
strangers.
that was never going to happen.
Yeah, and you
When I
can
was
teach
a kid.
yourself to do anything. You can go on YouTube and learn how to build a house, right?
Yes.
Like, so that's true. Great point. Okay, there's only just a couple of more. So, related to this concept of what happened to that person and trying to understand their perspective, there's this piece about faith as survival versus faith as healing, right? And so the concept is that faith can be used to endure or to help you repair. But when we're dysregulated, it's used as survival because we're not giving ourselves the time to just kind of calm a little bit so that we can begin healing. And they brought up a great point because I got this talk point from ChatGPT, and I was like, I love that, right? And one thing they've said that really resonated was that when it comes to faith as healing and not just survival, some scriptural concepts, it says, be still and know. Why does God tell us to be still first? So we can regulate because the healing can't happen till then. Jesus told us, calm the storm first, right? Because safety comes before instruction. You got to feel safe before you can hear. And perfect love casts out fear. Fear is a nervous system response. And so we've got to get regulated to allow the healing even of our faith. Otherwise, it's more of a survival. So, having said all of that, right? How do you see faith evolving in how younger generations talk about emotions and healing nowadays? Like, what are your thoughts about how faith is used as a coping?
I hate to say it, and I could be wrong, but you don't really hear young people too much talking about faith.
Yeah.
You hear them talking about YouTube and Facebook and 677. What is it? 6 7 6 7. I don't know if that. I don't know if that's their faith or not. They do 6 7. What's that show they like to watch?
Which one?
The one Jacob was just telling me about.
I don't know.
Strange Things.
Stranger Things.
It's a young person in here with us, and Strange
that
Thing. I don't know if they really pull on their faith, or do they go on YouTube and pull from other people's experiences. And if somebody said, I felt sad and I ate banana pudding for 3 weeks, then they may be eating banana pudding for 3 weeks. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's a lot of information coming in from everywhere. Now, one of the beautiful things about YouTube and things like that is you can go online and you can hear sermons from across the world that you wouldn't be able to hear. Like one of the churches I really love is in New York. I think it's the number 2819. I love them, right? But without this technology, I couldn't do that.
Exactly.
And what I've seen, the young people, they're there and they will talk about their faith through social media. Not as much, I don't see just regular conversations, but I was just watching young people talking about fasting and trying to encourage other young people to fast. So I love that you pointed out the shift, because the way the world is shaped changes how we express all kinds of things. Our emotions, we've already covered, our faith, our coping mechanisms. All right, love that. Okay, so last concept they have about this is when we're at odds with someone, especially if it's a loved one, but it could be anybody. Instead of what's wrong with you, and instead asking what happened to you, our goal is to understand them without making excuses for the behavior, right? So we're not saying you have to just agree with, maybe they really were out of order or really being a jerk, okay? But before you write them off, what happened to you? So that I can understand, but I'm not going to excuse the behavior. Like, it still has to be a boundary of, how we'll interact. So that question helps explain the behavior, but it doesn't erase the impact of behavior. So this will be my final question for you before we start wrapping up now. What wisdom would you offer about learning from the past without getting stuck there?
I think it should kind of look like what I just did. You remember in the past, but being able to relate to what's going on now, else you're not going to be able to get your point across. I probably can get kids to listen more to me if I was trying to help them by saying, now 6 7, they're gonna laugh.
Yes,
It's gonna change. Stranger Things, did this happen on Stranger Things? And they might look at me and laugh, but generations is always the same. You have to break the ice first.
Yeah.
You got to be able to relate, so they think, is this a dinosaur talking to me? Because if it is, then he's not going to understand 6 7. So there's no point in me talking to them, or they're not going to understand this new dance that I just watched off of TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think being able to relate to them, meaning that you pay attention to what's going on in their world, and for them to have some ideas about what's going on in a different generation's world.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
that could be the meeting place.
I love that, right? Because that's the whole point of asking what happened to you, is trying to understand. And so even for those of us who are older and talking to a younger generation, and maybe they want a quick answer. Well, if we think, what happened to them? If we think about what life was like, of course they want a quick answer. They grew up in a world where you could get access to information with the snap of a finger, right? So us taking all day, that might not resonate. So I love that. As our final kind of touching points and wrapping it up, the whole point of this, and if you get a chance to get the book, definitely check it out, or the podcast. But when we ask what happened, we're asking better questions of ourselves, of our family members, and those we relate to. It's an opportunity to try to, especially when it comes to adult parent-child relationships, you're trying to understand your parents' survival story. You're trying to understand that adult child's unmet needs and then look at God's design for restoration, right? That's why we ask, what happened to you? As always, it has truly been a pleasure, and we have some additional information and resources available on our Facebook page, You Plant, We Water. There's actually some reflection questions there that you can look at and journal. And if it's something that you all are interested in, if you need to have a repair conversation that goes across generations, I do have some really in-depth questions that you can ask to really try to begin to understand the story of your loved one and find that meeting ground where you can have the conversation where you're regulated, right? So if that's something you're interested in, I can put that there. But right now, we already have reflection questions, so take a look there. We are excited about 2026. We have big things on the horizons. There are retreats and conferences and all kinds of good things coming your way, so stay with us. Mom, thank you so much for coming on the show and just be so open and transparent and just willing to be on this platform under the spotlight. By the time this is over, you all gonna know everybody important to me because I keep pulling them in. But as always, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on You Plant, We Water.
The following program contains views that are not those of WVTC, iNetworks Communications, their subsidiaries, affiliates, or financial supporters.